This is my collection of Lumix lenses. I'm going to take you through each one of these and give you a quick overview of what they do and where you would use them in different situations. Now, these lenses can be used on any micro four thirds camera. So for example, a GH5 or a G9, anything like that. Okay, let's start with the smallest of the lenses. That's this guy. It's a 14mm prime lens. And this one retails, I'm just going to check my phone here. Yeah, retails for $200. And it is just incredibly tiny when I put this on here. So look, I'm going to show you the view from my GH5 camera. This is what it looks like. You can take a look around my studio here, /brewery/basement. Yeah, this is a really very nice lens, nice and wide open at 2.5 aperture, and just sort of really good as an everyday lens if you're just looking for a prime. I use this a lot actually for my overhead camera for shooting that. So let's move up then to a slightly bigger range, which is the 25mm. And I should mention at this point that when I'm talking about the millimeters, this is the reach, you know, how zoomed in the lens is. And because these are micro four thirds, 25mm is an equivalent size. If you're familiar with full frame cameras, it's an equivalent to a 50mm in a full frame camera. So if you have a Canon camera, for example, your 50mm prime, well, the equivalent of that is 25mm with micro four thirds cameras. Now this is a lens I use all the time for interviews. I really like this one. So my 25mm, it is $150, so it's the cheapest of all the lenses I've got here, and it has an aperture of 1.7. So here I am connected again to this guy. So you can see it's a bit more zoomed in, perfect for interviews, that sort of thing. And if we just sort of demonstrate the background blur you can get with this guy, I'm going to just focus in here on this lens and look at that beautiful bokeh behind it. To get that with a micro four thirds lens is really impressive, I think. So yeah, if you're looking for a good interview style lens, you cannot go wrong with this guy for the price. Now, if you've got a bit more money to play with, there is another 25mm lens from Lumix. This is made in partnership with Leica. Now, there's some differences here. For a start, this is a lot more expensive. So this guy is $700. This guy is $150. It is significantly heavier and it is a little bit faster. So this is a 1.4 aperture and that is a 1.7. So I'm going to put this lens on and I'm going to see if you can tell the difference between the two lenses. So scale this down to 1.4 aperture, taking a looking around. And if we zoom in now on my lens here, yeah, again, it looks absolutely lovely, really sharp, nice blur in the background, but is it worth like 4 times the price? That's really up to you. Okay, so those are some of my prime lenses. Prime lens meaning these are fixed length. You can't zoom in or out with them. Let's move on to this guy. This is the 12 to 35mm lens, and it's the first lens I ever got with my GH5, and it really is absolutely a wonderful lens. So this retails for about $800. It is a fixed aperture zoom lens. Now that means that when you zoom in and out here, the aperture stays the same the whole time, and for video, that's really important. It means that you don't have to mess around with your exposure as you're zooming in and out. It's always fixed at whatever aperture you set it to. Some of the other zoom lenses we'll talk about, they don't have that fixed aperture, and actually the aperture gets smaller and smaller, which means less light is getting in the more that you zoom in. So this is a very versatile lens, the range being 12 to 35. Let's stick this on. This is the lens I use just around the house all the time. So nice and wide shot here, but it does have some zoom. So if I use the zoom now, you can see that's zoomed out, zoomed in. It's got a pretty decent reach. It'll also give you a bit of bokeh as well, so if we come zoom in on this, nowhere near as much as we were getting before with those prime lenses, because this is only a 2.8 aperture lens, but it really does very nicely with that fixed aperture at zooming in and out. So it's a lot of money, but it really does a very nice job. The other thing to say about this lens is, of all of the lenses we've looked at so far, none of them have any inbuilt stabilization in. This one does. So if I start to move the camera around a little bit, so I'm shaking the camera here, and quite a lot, and it really does a good job combining its stabilization in the lens with the stabilization in my GH5 to keep a very steady shot. This is great if you want to do sort of panning shots. So let's just pan across these lenses here. Really looks almost sort of like it's on a gimbal or a slider. It does such a nice job of smoothing everything out. So that is the 12-35, one of my absolute favorite lenses. Now, if you asked me, if I could only have one lens, which one should I buy? I would actually say this lens here. This is the 14-140. That's right, 14-140 lens. So it's got an incredible range of reach. And if I check my phone to see how much I paid for this, yeah, I paid $350. That doesn't even seem right. But yeah, this is just a super value lens and super versatile. So I'm going to put this on and show you how that zoom really works. So let's zoom all the way out. Now at its widest view, I get an aperture of 3.5, which is not as good as some of these other lenses, but it's not bad. When I zoom in all the way, it goes to 5.6. So that's an example there of how we don't have a fixed aperture in this lens. But my goodness, the reach. Remember, this is out. Let's go all the way in. Really, really impressive. And the thing actually with all of these lenses is that they also support an additional level of zoom. So if we switch back to this camera again, and they have this option called extra tele conversion on many of the Lumix cameras. If I switch that to on, that actually gives me an extra level of zoom. So now when I zoom in here, I'm really, really super close to what I'm looking at. So let me just turn it off, turn it on. You see, you're getting that extra level of zoom as well. So super versatile. I use this when I'm at sports stadiums, for example, and I'm trying to shoot some of the action, and I'm absolutely miles away in the cheap seats. I just bring this tiny little lens with me, and I'm able to really capture the action, especially with that teleconvert option on. So if you could only have one lens, I think this is the lens to get. It's great for shooting yourself because it's 14mm, so it's great for self shoots, and it's also super for the zooming in part. All right, two more lenses to show you now. One quite expensive and one not so much. This is the quite expensive one. This is the 35-100 Lumix lens. It is a 2.8 aperture, and it really is a sister lens to this 12-35. So this 12-35, then this will take you the rest of the way 35-100. Again, it's got the dual stabilization in it. It's fixed aperture again, so it stays the same aperture as you zoom in. Really, really nice lens. And at a 2.8 aperture, it's nice and bright. Let's plug this one in. Take a look. So here we are at, this is 35mm, and then we're going to zoom all the way into 100. Yep. So not quite as much range as the other one, but the aperture is staying at 2.8 the whole time as I go in here. So when I go to conferences and areas where it's not particularly necessarily well lit, using the lens I just showed you, the 14-140, although it has plenty of reach, it struggles in indoor situations where there's not enough light, but this handles it so much better because it is at a 2.8 aperture. And yeah, again, the stabilization is really, really good on this one. And then finally then, I wanted to show you my big zoom lens, you know, your safari lens. The first thing to say about this is the reach is 100 to 300, which in full frame equivalent is 200 to 600. If you see a full frame lens that has a reach of 600 millimeters, it is gonna be like really big. These are the things you see at sports stadiums, you know, with professional photographers and so forth. So the fact that this zoom lens comes in such a small package is really quite remarkable. Now, honestly, I don't find myself using this lens all that much because the 14 to 140 is often everything that I need if I need a zoom. But if you really do need a good long reach of a zoom, and I have taken this to sports stadiums too, then this is a cracking lens. It's $550, so it's kind of in between price ranges of the others. So here I am zoomed out, I'm at 140. You can see it's already hard to kind of get anything in focus because here I am at 100 millimeters at 4.0, and yeah, I'm already zoomed in pretty close. If I go into 300, you can read the small print on this box. I mean, it really is insane. Now if we zoom over here to something a bit further away, this is my brewing kettle. This is absolutely miles away, but I can zoom right in there. And of course with this lens as well, I could use that extra teleconvert option, turn that on and off as well to really get the most out of that lens. So just really considering how small it is, I mean, yeah, it's a lot bigger than some of these other lenses, but compared to a non-micro Four Thirds lens, considering its size, it is a beast, and it's pretty inexpensive too. So that is my lens collection. I started off with just one and it kind of spiraled from here. I'm doing videos on all of these lenses, just dedicated videos on each one. So if you want to know more about any of these lenses, go take a look at that video and you can find out a little bit more about how I'm using it, some more of the specs and so forth. But yeah, my little collection of micro Four Thirds lenses. Thanks for watching.